Special technique. Special technique of shadow boxing. Special technique of shadow boxing. Shadow boxing. Shadow boxing.
Yeah. What's up? What's going on? You're here live on the Boxing Source Radio Show on the Go Long Media channel on Blog Talk Radio. I am your host, James Bell, lead boxing analyst for the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. Check out boxing articles on the coldhardtruthonsports.com or thechtonsports.com. You'll check out, feature articles on boxing, football, basketball, baseball, and more. And also, follow the social media handles that we have. The Boxing Source on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Google+. We also have the CHT on boxing. So check out those social media handles and check those out with news, commentary, various thoughts, and more on there. But as far as this new episode that we are having here on Sunday, December 3rd, 2017, it will be pretty much a filled show here, as we're going to talk about the fights that happened over at the Madison Square Garden last night. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the headline event that was at the MGM National Harbor earlier this week. So we're going to be going through all of that here on this show today. So be sure to check it out here on the Go Long Media channel here on Blog Talk Radio. Pretty much going to have an hour and a half here to talk boxing. So if you wanted to talk in for the thoughts on that Sadam Ali Miguel Cotto fight, you can call in at 347-237-5539. Once again, 347-237-5539 to press the one key to get on cue, and you'll be able to talk in live on the show. Michael was saying here with this opening, pretty much going to go over the card that was at the Madison Square Garden there last night. Of course, it was headlined by the WBO Super Welterweight title fight between Miguel Cotto and Sadam Ali. But we're just gonna go over some of those results that we had in this particular fight card. First wanted to get touch on the matchup between Zachary Ochoa against Eric Daniel Martinez. Zach Ochoa was coming in there with 17 wins and just one loss. The loss coming to Vasilisa Jr. Earlier this year, pretty much was on March 11th of this year. And then he had another fight after that in July. Was able to win that fight by unanimous decision. And then had this matchup here against Eric Daniel Martinez, who was coming in there with a 14-10-1 record. Had two consecutive losses coming into the fight. Lost actually 4 of his last 5 fights here before going up against Zachary Ochoa. And Ochoa was able to get another unanimous decision win, his second consecutive unanimous decision win, to move to 18 wins, just as that, that single loss of his record. And he'll be, pretty much trying to get into the, into the title picture, pretty soon here. He's there, around the 140, 140-pound division there. So he's going to try to, get some more fights, more little higher profile fights here to try to, get back into it. Of course, he, suffered that loss that he had to Alessi in March of 2017. So he's going to see if he could get like another shot to that level pretty soon. I mean, I've seen him in action a couple of times in the D.C. Armory. Saw him back in 2014 in that fight card that was headlined by Bernard Hopkins there. So there was Bernard Hopkins when he defended his title there at the D.C. Armory. That one also had the Sean Porter fight against Paulie Malignaggi. So Zach Ochoa was part of that card. And then the other time he was at the D.C. Armory was in March of 2016, which was headlined by the Luis Ortiz and Tony Thompson main event there, which, also had as part of that, fight card was Sadam Ali's fight with Jesse Vargas, which I will talk about a little bit and when I talk about the main event of the Madison Square Garden card. So here you go. You have Zach Ochoa there, 18-1, and we'll see what Golden Boy has in store for him in the super lightweight division. Next, you also had like featherweight matchup. You had Ronnie Rios going up against Delvi Julio Bassa. It's kind of like a little tough name to say there, but Bassa was there, 19-3-0 with one no contest. Lost 3 of his last 6. While you had Ronnie Rios there, super bantamweight, was pretty much floating at super bantamweight. Did lose his previous fight for the WBC super bantamweight title against Ray Vargas by unanimous decision, but came into this fight 28-2. Like I said, with that second loss to Ray Vargas for that super bantamweight championship. Also lost by TKO to Robinson Castellanos, who was a kind of a notable fighter, over the past couple of years there in those lower weight divisions. But, here Ronnie Rios was able to get a unanimous decision win over Bassa to move to 29 wins and just 2 losses. So like 29 wins with just 13 KOs. You're going to see he's, there, floating around that featherweight, super bantamweight division there, but here for this particular fight, they were able to have it at the featherweight weight limit there. So Ronnie Rios was able to, shake off that loss to Ray Vargas earlier this year. That was at, at the Stuff Holt Center. That was part of that. They were part of the undercard for Miguel Cotto's previous fight before being here at Madison Square Garden. So we're gonna see, what's next in store for Ronnie Rios. After getting this unanimous decision win, maybe he'll, try to see if he could either stay at that featherweight weight limit if he's not able to make it at super bantamweight, or go back down to super bantamweight and see if he could get another world title shot in that particular weight class. Next up, you have at light flyweight for the vacant WBO light flyweight championship. It was Angel Acosta against Juan Alejo there at light flyweight. Acosta coming in there 16-1. which and this was like a pretty much a interesting little matchup here for the vacant World Light Flyweight Championship, as you had Angel Costa there. He was coming in there at 16-1 with basically 16 KOs. But his previous fight, that was on May 20th of this year, he was fighting Kosei Tanaka for the WBO World Light Flyweight Championship. And he was coming in there 16-0, 16 KOs. Like I said, beating everybody by knockout. And this matchup here was against Kosei Tanaka, who was coming in there 8-0, undefeated, and Acosta ended up losing that fight by unanimous decision. And what was interesting about this is that, I mean, this was a defense for Kosei Tanaka for that light flyweight championship. He won that fight by unanimous decision. Then, a few months later, he was able to defend that world light flyweight title and win by TKO victory. However, this fight between Angel Costa and Juan Alejo ended up being for the WBO World Light Flyweight title. So, either I guess, you had Kosei Tanaka end up, not paying the fees for the WBO belt, or maybe wasn't able to afford it, or whatever. But circumstances have led to, this fight with Angel Acosta and Juan Alejo, being for that WBO World Light Flyweight Championship. And so Acosta ends up actually winning this fight against Juan Alejo by TKO victory to win that WBO Light Flyweight title. It's going to be interesting there and see what happens with this WBO title, as Kosei Tanaka, is still undefeated, at 10-0 right now. Never lost a fight. But it looks like here he ended up, losing the belt. So, now you're going to have Angel Costa there, 17-1 with the WBO Light Flyweight title. You're going to see if there's going to be something to where either you're going to have Tanaka and his, promotional crew or management or whatever say something to the WBO about, somebody that he beat ended up getting the title that he had. So maybe there may be a couple of lawsuits coming or allegations or whatever it is. But I just find it interesting that Acosta was able to fight for a world title that he couldn't win after fighting the guy that held the title. So we may, let me see if I can get into that a little bit to find out more information as to why that is the case. Next up, wanted to get into that co-feature bout on the HBO telecast at Madison Square Garden. And we had the WBC Super Bantamweight champion, Ray Vargas, going up against Oscar Negrete. And both of these guys are undefeated. Ray Vargas there, 31-0-0. Oscar Negrete, 17-0-0. And you see that it looked like this is basically like I would say a technical fight. I saw like most of this fight here, was like off and on. To be honest, I didn't really see anything that kind of really impressed me about the current, or the champion the guy coming in there as champion, Ray Vargas or Oscar Negrete. You had Vargas there in his second defense of that WBC Super Bantamweight Championship. I think that he was able to win it from Gavin McDonald after it was vacated in 2016 because a couple of years ago Leo Santa Cruz held the belt and he ended up moving up in weight, and then the belt kind of like changed hands a few times. Julio Ceja had the belt. Then he lost it in a rematch to Hugo Ruiz. Then Hugo Ruiz ended up, losing it to Hasegawa. And then after that, it looked like Hasegawa ended up having that belt relinquished. And then Ray Vargas ended up beating Gavin McDonald for the vacant belt in February of this year over in England. He ended up winning by majority decision there in that particular fight, and then defended it once in August as part of that undercard at the StubHub Center there. So, that was part of that StubHub Center card with Miguel Cotto and Yoshihiro Kamagai. But my thing with Ray Vargas, he's there as like one of the highly rated guys there in the super bantamweight division. Of course, you had Guillermo Rigondeaux running things at super bantamweight as to up to the point where nobody in the super bantamweight division wanted to fight him. Of course, he was winning that. He won a world title there at super bantamweight. Ended up having that win against Nonito Donaire and Joseph Akbeko, and then just basically ran the super bantamweight division up to the point where other world champions wouldn't want to fight him. They would rather fight each other than fight Guillermo Rigondeaux. And that was like the whole situation there. And so super bantamweight there, I mean, you have different guys. You have Jesse Magdaleno there with a world title. You also have Marlon Topoles, and of course Julio Ceja, who kind of held the belt at one point. But here with Ray Vargas, he was able to get that unanimous decision victory over Oscar Negrete. And from what I'm looking at here, I kind of see something that may happen with Ray Vargas under Golden Boy pretty soon. I would not be surprised if Ray Vargas ends up having a defense of that title against Diego De La Hoya. Let me see if I could hit up the rankings here real quick before I get the caller that I have online on. And yep, you have Julio Ceja at number 1 and Diego De La Hoya at number 2. So I would not be surprised if Ray Vargas faces Diego De La Hoya for that WBC Super Bantamweight title. Now, wanted to add in area code 202 to the Boxing Source radio show. What's going on with you?
James.
Yo, what's going on?
James, what's going on? It's world ranked, man. Cotto lost, man. I know you're going to get into that, but Cotto
Yeah, Cotto lost, man, and I mean, I got some thoughts on it, man, because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, he lost, but there may be a little backstory to it, so I might get into that a little bit here, but yeah, it was, kind of like breaking down this whole thing with, Ray Vargas defending that WBC belt, and Zach Ochoa getting the win. Two in this fight card at the Madison Square Garden. So I kind of like went through most of the undercard up to this point. So any thoughts on what you're able to see on the HBO telecast, if anything?
So was Ochoa on the telecast? Because I watched a little bit of the Vargas fight, but I didn't see it live. Was Ochoa on the live card, or was it just the Vargas and Cotto fight?
No, I don't think it was.
So, Vargas, you kind of took my thunder with the Diego De La Hoya thing. Cause I was going, when I heard you talking about it, I was like, that seems like a perfect opponent. But the one thing about that is, and I think a reason why it hasn't happened yet is, I think, they want to give Diego a title, and Ray Vargas is probably the toughest style matchup in the division. In terms of size, in terms of the dimensions that he brings. So I think they might be a little hesitant, on pulling the trigger on that fight. It does make sense. I think they really want to give Diego maybe an easier route. So maybe they hope that Vargas moves up, or they might go another route. But I'm in agreement with you. I think that facing Ray Vargas was the original, or going for the WBC title probably was the original goal, but I don't know if they're sure that they want to take that route.
Yeah, other than that, you have Diego ranked number 7 in the WBA and number 5 in the IBF, and also number 5 in the WBO. So it's like, with the WBC, that's the highest ranking that he's on right now. So unless if, he just says, let me go after Jesse Magdaleno and see if, I get something off that, or, excuse me, maybe seeing what happens with this whole thing with the fight that's coming up next week in the Madison Square Garden Theater, as the WBA super bantamweight title, or the WBA quote unquote super bantamweight title ended up being vacant or basically non-existent then. But here I just see that, other than Julio Ceja, trying to get another opportunity for that WBC super bantamweight belt, the only other option seems to be Diego De La Hoya right there.
So, watching him yesterday, what do you think? I know Rigondeaux may not come back to 122, but predicting that fight, I think it'll be a nice clash of styles if they fought each other, because Rigo's pretty small, and, Ray Vargas looks like he's a behemoth at that weight. So,
yeah,
I would watch. I would want to see it just for that, just for the different size and the style matchup. Might make it more competitive.
Yeah, it could make it more competitive, but to me, it just depends on how active Ray Vargas would be throwing his punches and trying to use his range against Guillermo Rigondeaux. My thing with Rigondeaux is that he just figures his opponent out and then sees what openings are available first before exploiting those openings. So it's like he almost dares you to be the aggressor first, so that he knows what your weaknesses could be after you try to, give yourself up or whatnot. But I would say that would be an interesting matchup. But I think, here with Rigondeaux, he wanted to basically go for the glory and pursue, Lomachenko, and now he has his wish, upcoming. So we're going to see what will be up with that particular matchup.
Yeah, I would just, it seems like HBO investing in Ray Vargas. I just want to know what their end goal is, because I would assume that it has to be. I don't think they just want to put him on undercards and not really have the end goal to set up some type of fight. Again, I don't know if the Jesse Magdaleno fight is reasonable, because I think Magdaleno is with Top Rank. So I want to see where they go, because his opponents haven't been that great, and I don't think, if you look at the fights that he's had, that he deserved that undercard spot, being as though he's not a big name. The fights aren't really that entertaining to be gathering that big of a spot.
Right. Yeah, I would have to see how they'll be able to match up Ray Vargas here in his next particular matchup, or if he wants to go after a unification. Yeah, but like you did mention with Magdaleno, him being under Top Rank, it may be a little bit difficult to have those kind of cross-promotional matchups between those title holders. I wanted to, jump into this thing here with the main event that was at the Madison Square Garden. As you had, coming into the fight, WBO light middleweight or super welterweight champion, or whatever these boxing organizations want to call it. Well, I just say he was a WBO 154-pound champion, Miguel Cotto, going into his last fight of his professional career against Sadam World Kid Ali. We know about Sadam Ali coming up in the ranks of the 140-pound division, and then, being undefeated at the 140-pound division, and then moving up to welterweight. Had his first opportunity at a world title going up against Jesse Vargas at the fight card in the D.C. Armory, and ended up losing that fight to Jesse Vargas. Had a couple of wins at welterweight after that, and then got this opportunity to fight Miguel Cotto for the WBO 154-pound title. A lot of people, thought that Miguel Cotto was going to go in there and get a, big win against somebody that was a heavy underdog. Like I said, he lost to Jesse Vargas for a world title, and Jesse Vargas is, as far as I know, is still 1-2 as a welterweight. So I didn't really, expect that much coming from Sadam Ali. And, after the first round or so, looked like Cotto had a good start, but Sadam Ali responded in the pretty much in the second round, third round, ended up catching Cotto a couple of times, affecting him. But going into the fourth through the sixth rounds, it looked like, still the momentum was going to be shifting towards Miguel Cotto. But after the seventh and eighth rounds, it seemed like something was up with Miguel Cotto. And, when that happened, Sadam Ali looked like he kind of picked up his activity a little bit. They had instances in between rounds, in between rounds 8 and 9 or 9 and 10, where you see with the HBO telecast, it kind of panned the cameras over to Sadam Ali's father, and his father was saying, Sadam, you need to, pick up your activity. You need to throw more. You need to throw more. And looked like he was doing that, pretty much in the 9th and 10th rounds. And the fight ended up going to the scorecards, and, people thought that Miguel Cotto would be able to, end this event with the win, but that was not the case. It was a unanimous decision victory for Sadam Ali, 112-116. I'll flip it: 116, 112, 115, 113, and 115, 113 again for Sadam Ali to win that WBO 154-pound title. You had Ali landing less total punches than Miguel Cotto, landing only 17 jabs throughout the fight. Did outland Cotto with the power shots. And Miguel Cotto ended up having to, go to the hospital because he tore his left bicep. They're saying it may have been around round 7, round 8 that he tore his left bicep there. So after that, it looked like his, overall activity went down. But here, I mean, it's I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, hey, Sadam Ali is the WBO champ here. So world rank. What you got? What are your initial thoughts about the fight in general, and then we could go into the decision for Sadam Ali.
So when we talked about it on the show, all of us was in agreement that we thought Miguel Cotto was going to win. Pretty dominant. I did put a flyer out on the call saying that I didn't think Miguel Cotto was going to stop him. So I attested that to the fact that I didn't think this wasn't the Miguel Cotto of old. Of course he's not, but I think that really played a part into it because I didn't think that he would be consistent with the body work, and he wasn't. He did do Miguel Cotto things where he did land to the body, but he couldn't follow up. I want to give Sadam Ali all credit because I didn't think he had a chance. We look back at the Vargas fight and say, if he lost to, a B-level welterweight, how he was going to fare against Miguel Cotto, who's a Hall of Fame fighter. But things that surprised me, I thought Sadam Ali, he brought the weight up well. I like I said last week, I thought he was a smaller welterweight, and I was so surprised that the size difference wasn't as big as I expected it to be. Miguel Cotto actually a small junior middleweight, so Ali to me looked at the bigger man. So
right, yeah.
I'll say for the first 4 rounds, I had Ali up 4-0. I think he dictated the pace. He landed the hardest shots. I think at that time Cotto was trying to figure him out. By the middle rounds, I scored 5-8 for Cotto. And then in the 8th round, clearly see a change in Cotto. His activity, like you said, went down. Sadam Ali was still wary of him, so he didn't step on the gas maybe that he could have. No, but he didn't know the reason why Cotto had slowed down, and I was just looking at the fight. I probably would assume that, hey, Miguel Cotto getting up there in age, Father Time had just caught up with him. And down the stretch, Ali just did a little bit more. He did land some hard shots. He bothered Cotto a couple of times. I think I underestimated Ali's, resistance. I didn't think he was going to be as resistant as he was. I underestimated his ability to move up and weight and take the weight well. He did a good job of that. So I give him all the credit, man. He for that fight to be in his hometown, moving up in weight, facing a Hall of Fame fighter. I mean, he stepped up to the plate as well as he could have. I scored it starting off again. Ali was first 4 rounds, Cotto the next 4, and then Ali down the stretch, I would say he won 9-3-11. I gave Cotto the 12th. So good, entertaining fight, much more than I expected at least.
Yeah, it ended up being a little bit, better than people thought it would be. It was a, pretty entertaining back and forth encounter by those two. I just didn't know what to make of the overall decision. I wouldn't say that, either fighter would have got robbed. So I probably would have been okay if it was like a draw, but I'll pretty much get into it right now. it was a close fight, and there were like some people that thought it was like a draw of some sort, but the way that the circumstances behind this particular fight, it couldn't be a draw. See what I'm saying? Because, you know, with it being Cotto's last fight, so to speak, right? It was either have Cotto win and end up vacating that WBO 154-pound title, or give the belt to Sadam Ali and have Sadam Ali be the WBO champion. So it was either one or the other. There was no draw. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like it could be Canelo Golovkin, where at least you know, regardless of the result, that there could be, you know, somebody that still would be the champion or still be able to defend or whatnot. So it was kind of like a whole, kind of seemed like more of a business move by having Sadam Ali be named the champion, whether he won close or he clearly won or not. It still, to me, you know, seemed like they had to make a definitive decision as to who the winner would be.
So let me ask you this. In your mind, though, if you looked at the fight and as a whole, who did you have winning?
I like, after just seeing it live, I really couldn't make a clear-cut decision as to who won that fight. I couldn't. I mean, I didn't necessarily see, you know, one fighter or the other clearly winning 7 rounds, or, you know, maybe have like a 6 round to 5 and 1 round to draw or anything like that. You know what I mean? So it was just like kind of like a toss-up fight to me.
I was surprised the fact that they had a unanimous decision for Ali. I mean, I thought he won. I wasn't biased or anything, but HBO was clearly on Cotto's side, at least until, you know, later on the fight. Once the 9th round came on, I think they started to realize that, hey, he's in a real fight, so let us not, I guess, jock him as much. But most of the early part of the rounds, even some of the things that Letterman was saying, you know, I just felt like they were giving Cotto every benefit of the doubt, and I was just, you know, I was surprised that it was a unanimous decision for Ali.
My thing was that I was surprised that one of the judges had Ali winning eight of those 12 rounds. I just, like, to me, it's almost like, you know, in reference to like kind of like judging a particular fight, I kind of like look for something to where it's a clear cut, you know, winning of the round or whatnot. So I would have to see, like, where is it to where Sadam Ali clearly made a difference to, you know, affect Miguel Cotto in those particular rounds. I mean, yes, Miguel Cotto kind of like faded at the end, but it wasn't like, you know, to the level where he was in serious trouble against Sadam Ali going into the last rounds of that fight. So, you know, having Sadam Ali getting 8 rounds is you know, kind of interesting to me. But you know, going into it, you know, I'm kind of like saying, like, yo, maybe Golden Boy just couldn't necessarily afford to have that WBO title, you know, be vacated. See what I mean? Because you know how this whole matchup kind of like was brought about, and a lot of those guys that Cotto could have faced, they ended up turning it down, and part of that reason was because they didn't necessarily want to, you know, be with Golden Boy long term. So I think that was kind of like part of the plan for, Golden Boy is that, they wanted, a backside guarantee for a fighter to sign to fight Miguel Cotto. It's almost like, how Timothy Bradley ended up signing with Top Rank in order to get the fight with Manny Pacquiao. And Manny Pacquiao ended up losing that fight by decision to Timothy Bradley, and Bradley ended up being with Top Rank long term.
So, James, I definitely respect your opinion. I do not agree, though, because I guess Sadam Ali was already with Golden Boy, so I guess it made it easier for them to make the fight with him. But in terms of, and I'm with you on the conspiracy stuff. Me being on the show, when I call in, I generally talk about stuff like that. But for this fight, I don't see it only because I fought at 7-5 for Ali, and I gave Cotto the 12th round, which was a round that I thought could have went either way. So if I'd have just liked Ali a little more in the 12th round, for me that's 8-4. I think Cotto didn't do anything in the last 3 or 4 rounds, other than the 12th round where he tried to open up a little bit. From the 9th to the 11th, he did nothing. So let's say we give Ali those 3 rounds there, and then even when you talked about the fight, you said Ali did do things between round 2 and 4. So let's say we give him 2 rounds of that. So that's 5, and then we got the rest of the fight. And I don't think Cotto won every other round. So I can see, again, judging is subjective, and I don't think there's any malice behind this particular judge. And I just,
right.
Like you said, there wasn't a clear winner, but I don't think Cotto did anything to win 8 rounds either. So at some point, somebody has to get the rounds. And, Cotto did do his work in the middle rounds, but other than the middle rounds, I don't think he did much, especially late.
Yeah, I mean, late, yeah, after suffering his injury, yeah, he really, didn't do much as far as, like, activity is concerned. And I think that is why, at the end of the fight, basically those, unofficial CompuBox statistics, even though Cotto total had more, basically had more punches landed, that Sadam Ali had more power shots landed in this particular fight. So I think that kind of, once Ali found out that there was, something going on with Cotto, then that's when he kind of like, had a little bit more confidence and picked up the pace against Cotto, where he probably didn't think that he had, anything coming back to him, after that. Real quick, I got 813, area code 813 on the line. What's going on with you?
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Terrell calling in from Tampa. Hey, just real quick, I didn't get to see the fight. I'm going to definitely catch it this week. But I'm going to tell you what, even without me seeing the fight, I full well expected to jump on a late website late last night, seeing a farewell to Cotto with a victory. And when I saw that Sadam Ali won, I was like, whoa, that's not how this story was supposed to be written, So I was very, very shocked to see that Sadam Ali won. And just to further the point, I like the point that you made on social media, James, where you stated that, well, for Sadam Ali to have won the fight, how could he even consider contending with any other people at 154? And you look at someone that got knocked out at 147 last year, I think by Estrada, whoever the guy that knocked him out. So now he's at 154 with the WBO title.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to contend at 154. And it's not like he dominated Cotto, So it's not like he just beat him down. And even in boxing, when we see strange decisions and stuff like that, particularly this year, you in a sense, I almost expect him to quote unquote give it to Cotto, fighting in New York, Madison Square Garden, wherever it was, and his last fight, last hurrah. I kind of expected him to get a gift win in a sense, and not that he's been given gifts before with Cotto. He's pretty much earned everything he has. I was definitely in shock to see that Ali won that fight. So I'll let you guys continue to break that down for me. Thank you.
I'm gonna start here with World Rank. Kind of like repeat what you were saying as far as like your overall analysis of this particular fight, and the part where you like kind of disagree with me in reference to like having an ultimatum result of this fight.
So yeah, I think I guess the disagreement would have to be from the earlier rounds, because even at round when Cotto was coming on, from Letterman to Matt Kellerman, everyone was saying that this fight, I guess in the 6th, 7th round, was 3-3, 4-4. It wasn't. Nobody was saying Cotto was running away with the fight, even at that point when Cotto was having his best rounds. So, like I said earlier, down the stretch, Cotto obviously was injured, but at that time we didn't know that. So I thought initially that it was fatigue, why Cotto kind of slowed down. But obviously it was the injury to his bicep. But again, Ali down the stretch, from 9 to 11, I thought Cotto didn't do anything. So by default, even if Ali didn't land anything clean or hurt Cotto, he did buckle Cotto legs early and late, at least one time each. Not enough to to have him like he was about to get a knockdown or something, but you can clearly see the punches had effect on Cotto. Where Cotto didn't land anything throughout the whole fight that had really any impact on Ali, other than a hard jab that he had I guess in the middle of the fight where he pushed Ali back with the jab. But other than that, there was really anything that he landed that's can say that he won the fight clearly. And just for me, because he didn't do anything down the stretch, and then the middle fight, again, it was close. If you take 4-4 and then Ali sweeps the last round, that's a 7-5, 8-4 fight.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much how you like kind of broke it down. I mean, I just like when I pretty much like initially had thoughts about the fight, I was just like, there wasn't really anything for me that kind of said, hey, Sadam Ali, like clearing the way, beat Miguel Cotto, so to speak, even in those rounds where he kind of like upped the pace. So where, he kind of upped the pace and got those rounds, then, I kind of said like, yeah, it probably would be a very close fight. But I didn't think it would be like something to where, I would give like a clear, 7-5 win to Sadam Ali, and definitely not 8-4, even if he had, three of those last four, or, 4 of those last 4 rounds. Because if he had 4 of those last 4 rounds, then that would mean that he would have had 4 of those previous 8. And so I'm like, in those first 8 rounds, did he clearly win 4 of those rounds? And I just couldn't see where he won 4 of those first 8 rounds. The thing that I kind of like went into before you were able to get on, Terrell, was that my overall conclusion and what I said about what I posted on Facebook was that I kind of had that feeling about the results of this fight was because, I felt that they had to have an ultimatum decision in reference to this particular fight, because if they didn't, or if they had Cotto winning, then Cotto would retire as the WBO 154-pound champion, but then end up having that championship vacated. So it's like you have that championship vacated, you don't necessarily, get the guarantees of having a high level, kind of like having a high level, high profile fight with a world title on the line. and you don't have the WBO, having to wait to get their sanctioning fees for holding a particular fight, because I was looking at the thing here for the rankings with Fight News through FightNews.com, and they have when they had Miguel Cotto at champ, their rankings were going as follows: Magomed Kurbanov, then Liam Williams, then Kanat Islam, then Liam Smith, then John Vera, then Jimmy Kelly, then Dennis Hogan, then Yuki Nanaka. And you go through that list, other than like two people that kind of like jump out at you because you've seen them in the fights. You've seen Liam Smith in the fight with Canelo Alvarez. Other than that, you really can't, have any type of recognition with those fighters. So for the WBO, it's almost like either they had to have a name tied behind the belt or a well-known promotional organization that has somebody under their banner that holds the belt in order to kind of give some quote-unquote validity to that title. Because now with Sadam Ali having a world title, what's next in store for Sadam Ali as a WBO champion? What other fights that are out there right now kind of make sense? Or where you could say, hey, Sadam Ali has a chance to like actually win this fight. You really can't see it from those other title holders, and he really can't fight those other title holders because all of them are under the Heyman banner. And the guy that's ranked number 15 in the WBO is under the Heyman banner, and I think he would probably be a favorite against Sadam Ali, or a lot of people would pick him over Sadam Ali, and that's J-Rod. So it's like, what else is what? I just don't see right now what is next in store for Sadam Ali as a WBO 154-pound champion. I don't know, a world rank. Maybe you can help me out with this.
James, so I got to challenge you on this because I got to go back to the scoring, because you say that Sadam Ali is possibly that it's not clear that he won 4 out of the 8 rounds. Okay, so I said earlier I thought Sadam Ali won the first 4 rounds. I thought Cotto won the next 4 rounds. Again, my opinion is that was 4-4. Kellerman, Letterman, Roy Jones, all of them had either said Ali was up at that time or the fight was even. Nobody was saying Cotto was walking away with the fight. And again, if Ali didn't clearly win the fight, Cotto didn't either. So it's not like, let's just say that it wasn't like Cotto was dominating either. So if you say that the fight was competitive, then you say that it's 4-4 or something like that. But it wasn't 6-2 Cotto or 7. Yeah. So I was not saying that.
But what I'm implying is that like I didn't like if it like I could understand if it's a 7-5 for Sadam Ali or a 6-6 or a 7-5 the other way. I just didn't think it would be something to the level of 8 rounds to 4 for Sadam Ali. And that's pretty much like what I gather from that overall thing. Right now I have real quick. Yeah, go ahead first, and then I'll give the other call on. Go ahead, World Rank.
So I just wanted to say, if you agree that the first 8 rounds was 4-4 or somewhere around that range, Cotto didn't do anything after that. So, and from my understanding, you kind of agree with that too. So if Ali swept the last 4 rounds, that's an 8-4 fight, and only one judge scored it like that. So again, I scored a 7-5. I gave Cotto the 12th round, but the 12th round was even a competitive round. You can give that round to Ali. So I can see how someone could get to 8-4. I don't think there's corruption there in the 8-4. Is that the max form? With everybody would say that it was an 8-4 fight? No, but I can see how it got there, and that's where it comes subjective. It wasn't, again, like I agree with you that the fight
Well,
Ali didn't. If you look at the fight, Ali didn't dominate it. But sometimes you can win an 8-4 fight and not dominate. You can just win the rounds. You can just close rounds. You can just give to a certain fighter, and hey, you got 8-4.
Well, I mean, like you were saying, it's kind of subjective there. So my thing would be, what was the overall gauge of the fight before Miguel Cotto suffered that injury? Because from there on through, we clearly saw that Ali picked up the pace in his activity and what he was able to land. But before that, I wouldn't necessarily say before that, but overall, we kind of see that it looked like, Cotto was landing more shots. Sadam Ali only landed an average of a little bit over one jab per round for the whole fight. So I would like to know how much activity was there for Miguel Cotto up until the point that he ended up tearing his left bicep. All right, we got area code 646 with us. What's going on with you, man? Or whoever.
I'm just
who's calling?
listening to how you guys are saying that there's nothing left for Ali going forward. I was looking at the WBO rankings, and obviously his mandatory is going to be Liam Smith, so that fight is probably going to be next. But he also had Jermell Charlo call him out and ask him for a unification fight. So the whole narrative that he can't make a fight with an Al Haymon fighter, I think is really overblown. I think there's going to be fights out there for him at 154 because everyone knows he's the weakest of the champions. They're just going to want that belt. They look at that as an easy belt to get. So I think he's going to have his pick of whoever he wants because everyone wants to fight him. He's going to be like Jeff Horn of 154. He's going to have fighters calling him out all the time because they know he's an easy prey, and that's an easy belt to get. As for yesterday's fight, I posted that if these judges are fair, the fight is going to be either 7-5 or 8-4 for Ali. Ali clearly won rounds 2 and 4. He won rounds 8-12. And there was one other round that could have went either way. I kind of shaded it towards Ali because I thought he did more than what Cotto did in that round. But I thought it was clear that Ali won at least 7 rounds. So I'm not sure what the dispute over the scorecards are. Because if you think about it, 8-4 it's just a 1-round difference from 7-5. And there were 7 clear rounds that I thought that Ali won. And if you gave him the first round, then I can see you scoring at 8-4. There were 7 clear rounds for Ali. There were 4 clear rounds for Cotto, and there was 1 round that I thought could have went either way. But the right decision was made.
I thought round 1 and round 12 were debated rounds. I thought round 1 could have gone either way. I chose Ali in round 1. I thought round 12 could have gone either way. I gave it to Cotto. So I came up with 7-5, but again, if I twist either one of those rounds, or I could see a draw, or I could have had 8-4.
Yeah, and that's the thing where the whole subjective part comes in, and where I would have to kind of look at it and say where if there was a point, because pretty much the overall consensus that I'm getting in reference to this particular fight is that from rounds 8 to round 12, or particularly rounds 9 to round 12, that Ali clearly won at least 3 of those rounds. From rounds 9 to round 12, he won at least 3 of those rounds. That's pretty much been the consensus. It's just that like here with World Rank, what you're saying is you're kind of undecided about who won round 1 and who won round 12, and I'm trying to see how many rounds that Ali was able to get from round 1 to round 6 because it was a clear difference to me from Cotto's activity from round 7 and round 12. And, you know, even with that decline of activity from round 7 and round 12, he ended up having landed more punches overall than Sadam Ali did. So I'm trying to figure out if it was something where either he had outlanded him a lot more in one particular round and then outlanded him just a couple times more in another round or whatever, because I don't have the round by round punch statistics as of yet for that particular fight. Now the thing that you were saying there, 646, in reference to what else is out there for Sadam Ali, and you did bring up that, you know, it's a similar situation with Jeff Horn, which I agree with. My thing is that will we have that opportunity to see where, you know, Golden Boy will be able to, you know, work with a fighter that's advised by Al Heyman? If that is the case, then yeah, they'll probably, you know, see if that's going to happen, you know, sometime later in 2018, because yeah, I do feel that, you know, Ali will probably defend against a Liam Williams there, or Kurbanov, who's currently there ranked at number 1. Yeah, Kurbanov. What, is Liam Smith?
Yeah, Smith. Smith is the mandatory.
They named him mandatory? It was like they just did or something.
Yeah,
they
he won
named the mandatory yesterday.
Yeah, he won the fight against Liam. Yeah, he won the 2 fights against Liam Williams. Specifically that recent one. So,
yeah, Liam Smith is the mandatory for Ali.
So yeah, so I guess in those latest WBO rankings, they put him above whatchamacallit, Korbanov or you know, whoever he was there. So that's what ended up happening, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the WBO rankings right now. Liam Smith is the number 1 contender at super middleweight. Then you have Kurbanov from Russia. Then you have Islam from Kazakhstan, Dennis Hogan, and then you got John Vera from the USA rounding out the top 5. But Liam Smith was already named the mandatory for whoever was going to win the fight last night.
Gotcha. So yeah, so that's probably going to be the, you know, pretty much the I would say the immediate thing there for Sadam Ali in that particular, you know, in that particular thing there. So yeah, we're seeing here as of November 11th. Yeah, they did have Liam Smith there at number 1 and Kurbanov there at number 2 as the international junior middleweight champion there. And then I guess, yeah, Liam Williams was down there at number 12. So they didn't have the things updated on the Fight News website there.
So, James,
yeah, J-Rock's at 14.
James, I want to challenge you on the punch stat item. And I know every person who watches a fight can't score a fight, but I thought that was the be all. If we judge a fight and we say we score round by round and say, hey, this person won 8-4. Now, punch stat numbers do play a part, but even from me looking at the fight, to me, I thought Ali landed more punches. If somebody told me who landed the most punches, especially for Cotto not being active later on in the fight, and early on he wasn't really active. So I don't know how.
I can understand that from looking at it, but I mean, my thing is that, like, and I like keep going back to it, is like, okay, did like Ali like outland Cotto, or, you know, seem like the more active fighter in that first half of the fight? We saw it in the second half, but was it like that in the first half of the fight? Especially like in those, there were like instances where you had Sadam Ali fighting off his back foot, fighting on the ropes, you know, fighting in the corner. So from that particular point was, you know, Ali, you know, kind of, you know, being the more active fighter while, you know, fighting in the rope while he had his back to the ropes and things like that. So I mean, there was like a couple of times where he was like back to the ropes, and then Cotto was, trying to work on him, and then Ali was able to step away and things like that. But was that, the majority of the case in that first half of the fight?
No, because you said that he landed the more harder shots. He hurt Cotto at least twice in the fight. So you said he landed more harder shots. Mostly the more important shots he landed more of. He visibly hurt Cotto, in the fight. And again, we go back to the obviously we're not arguing about the end of the fight. But if you just take the middle of the fight, even if it's an even fight at that particular point, which everybody kind of agrees on, that it was close to even, maybe Ali was up, maybe Cotto may have been up, but it was one round here or there in the middle going into the later rounds of the fight. So if that is the case, then we have an even fight after 8 or close to it. So we're not really debating anything, really, because I just get the take that you feel like Ali didn't win the fight or he didn't do enough. And if you say he didn't do enough early in the fight, are you saying Cotto won 6 of the 8 rounds in the first half?
6 of the 8 rounds in the first half. I would say not 6 of the 8. I would say 5. I would say 5 of the 8. And then you would have on that, in that second half, you would at least have, Ali having 3 and then 1, and then you would end up with that 1, right? So if even if you had Cotto having 5 of those first 8, so then that would be 5-3, and then you have Ali winning at least 3 of those final 4. So then that's 6-5, and then you have 1 final round. So either you have a 7-5 for Ali, or you'll have a draw. And that's pretty much what I'm getting from that. I wouldn't necessarily say that Cotto did enough for clearly, win the fight. I'm just saying that, it kind of was, something where it could have been very close, where it could have been 7-5 either way. Or 6-6.
So you wouldn't take, I guess, offense to someone saying that Ali won the fight?
No, not
you're
necessarily,
saying that,
no.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying that, to me, it didn't look very clear to be an 8-4. 7-5 I could see, but not necessarily 8-4, and that's pretty much where, kind of where the gap is. But, he was able to win the fight. He was able to stay composed in various parts of the fight there. But, after, it just looked like, after that 8th round is where you started to see him pick up, things a little bit. But, it was like a stark contrast with this particular fight between, him and Cotto than him and Jesse Vargas. But one other thing that I would like to, raise is that, the Cotto that you saw last night, was it kind of similar to the Cotto that you saw against Yoshihiro Kamagai, where he was able to win the fight, but he didn't necessarily, push himself in order to finish Kamagai off?
And I had mentioned that in last week's show about I didn't think he had enough to kind of finish Ali. But even to me, Cotto was even more faded than I thought he was. And I think the injury played a part in it, so I don't want to downplay it that much. But I think, his age, and again, like I said earlier, I thought the size difference was going to be more. And Ali actually was the better boxer yesterday, which was kind of surprising. He was the guy boxing off the back foot, even though he had trouble at times when he did that. To me, he seemed like the more fit, better boxer.
Well, as it pertains to the way Cotto looked last night, after Cotto's fight with Kamagai, I said Cotto looks finished. He looks washed up. I could see that right away because, to me, Cotto in his last couple fights, and this is a common thing with Freddie Roach fighters, they're way too hittable. And Kamagai he was basically coming up from a really low weight class to fight Cotto. He's a really small, skinny guy, not very powerful. And I said at the time, if Cotto was fighting anyone else with any other type of pop, they would have got him out of there the way he was getting hit versus Kama guy. So I knew that Ali was going to give Cotto a lot of trouble. Now, I didn't expect him to rock Cotto as much as he did, because Cotto was visibly hurt 4 times in the fight. He was visibly hurt 4 times in the fight. And I didn't see that coming, but it was clear to me that Cotto was already finished. His punch resistance is very low right now. Some of those shots Ali hit him with, you wouldn't expect a Miguel Cotto to get rocked from that. But you can tell when age hits a fighter, attrition hits a fighter, they just don't take shots the same way they used to. And Cotto doesn't take shots well anymore. So the way Ali was going at him, and I actually have the punch stats in front of me round by round. You look at the punch stats round by round, Cotto, it looked like he was landing more, but that was more he was jabbing. And his jab wasn't even a powerful jab. But Ali was outlanding him with the power shots consistently. And the power shots were really affecting Cotto a lot. It changed his game plan. It messed up his footwork. Cotto had his feet way too close together. I don't know what he was working on in training with Freddie, but his stance wasn't the same way it usually is either. So I think maybe the speed and the power of Ali surprised him, and it was really evident in the second half of the fight that Cotto just had nothing left for Ali, because Ali was just way too fast for him.
To Jay Cotto's point, I mean, he's right about the punch resistance thing. And Ali isn't a big puncher even at welterweight, so to see Cotto shooken up and hurt like that was very surprising. And it speaks more to where Cotto was in terms of where he is in his career than Ali, because obviously Ali is not a big puncher at 47 or 54. So to see Cotto get buzzed or hurt a few times like he was really surprising, even to have Ali coming up in weight.
You guys still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it's like everything is solid.
Yeah, I'm here.
But
too.
moving forward, is there anyone in the 154-pound division that you think Ali can actually beat? So this was his first fight at 154, so it's not like he's used to fighting fighters of this power.
Terrell, you want to take that first? I know you ain't see the fight, but you want to give your opinion about what you think Ali is?
No, well, I mean, I forgot who made the point. Which one of you guys? But it's actually a great point where it was stated that Ali won't be able to get fight. But like I said, once again, somebody made a point where people are going to be looking to target him as an easy mark to grab that belt up. So he's and that's probably going to be regardless of whether it be an Al Haymon promoted fight or whatever. He's definitely an opportunity for someone. So it's just a matter of who, because like I said, at 154, who is he going to beat? You know, I mean, he's going to have to carefully hand select an opponent. And the thing about it, for Ali's next fight, I would expect him to do that, to get him, quote unquote, warmed up in the division, to hand pick a quote unquote soft opponent to get the defense in for his belt. But after that, he's going to have to fight one of the monsters at 154. You know, whether that be someone like J-Rock who may be in line after he beat Ishii Smith a couple weeks ago, whatever. But eventually, he's going to have to fight a monster, and it's going to be put up or shut up, and might be a 154 in and out for down to 147. So we'll see what the future holds. Like I expect one defense, and then I have to fight a monster after my point going forward.
Well, I mean, we mentioned that the rankings for that WBO at junior middleweight has Liam Smith as the mandatory contender for that title. Does anyone feel that Sadam Ali could beat Liam Smith?
I think he can. Yeah, I think he can. I don't think Liam Smith is that much better than Sadam Ali. Sadam Ali is the better boxer. The only question I have is if he goes, Sadam Ali is not going to knock him out. So if he goes over to the UK, which he probably will because it makes more money over there, not a lot, but it makes something much more than it would in the US, would he get a decision?
That's interesting. That is interesting. That and that would be probably the more logical circumstance in that potential matchup is that it'll end up being in England there to have Liam Smith's supporters there in full force for that particular fight, but unless if Sadam Ali, outboxes Liam Smith to have like something where it's a clear win, then I'm not certain that Sadam Ali would be able to leave the UK with that WBO belt. And like we were mentioning, those other champions there, Erislan Delara, Jared Hurd, and Jamal Charlo, specifically with Hurd and Charlo, both of those guys are, kind of like quote unquote big guys at 154. So it's like they walk off big or good size higher than 154. Then they're able to go down to 154, and then by the time the fight happens, then they're back to 165 pounds or 170 or whatever it is. So matching up Ali against one of those guys, that could be, ended up being a wash there, unless if, they're able to box themselves, unless if he's able to, box his ears off against those guys, like how, Austin Trout tried to do against the other Charlo and with Jared Hurd there. Got like 10 minutes, pretty much 10 minutes or so left in the live telecast live podcast here for the Boxing Source Radio Show. If anyone wanted to jump in, 347-237-5539. Once again, 347-237-5539. Press 1 key to get on the queue so you'll be able to talk live on the show. Looking forward to what's going on Saturday upcoming. You got like a lot of fights going on December 9th. You have Frank Warren having a card over in the UK that has James DeGale going up against Caleb Truax, Anthony Yard in action. You have I think you have Daniel Dubois also in action in that fight card there. Lee Selby will be defending the featherweight championship on there. So it's pretty much a pretty good, pretty stacked card there in the Copper Box Arena. That'll be pretty much in the afternoon over here on this side, stateside, and also, on the evening you have the telecast on HBO with Francisco Vargas and Orlando Salido fighting in separate fights. Tevin Farmer is going to be, attempted to get a world championship. And, of course, you have on ESPN, headline fight, Madison Square Garden Theater, Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Vasyl Lomachenko, there for Lomachenko's belt. Just wanted to get, people's thoughts about the fight cards on December 9th. I'm going to start here with I'm going to start with 646 there. I wanted to, get your thoughts on what's going to happen there on Saturday.
Well, honestly, no one gives a shit about the HBO card. No one should care about the HBO card. HBO probably shouldn't have did the card. They just wanted to take a little shine off of Rigo versus Lomachenko. That's the fight everyone wants to see. That's the fight. It's 50-50. I see a lot of people actually picking Lomachenko over Rigondeaux. I don't see it. I don't see how he's going to beat Rigondeaux with his style. He's actually pretty hittable too, and I think Rigo's probably gonna beat him pretty easily. As for the UK card, I think it's good to see DeGale back in action. After Gasol, it's good to see him back in action. I hope he does well. I hope he still has something left where he can dominate the division or move up to 175 and fight some of these monsters at 175. I don't think much of the Selby versus Ramirez fight. I think that's going to be an easy fight for Selby. DeBose, I think he's getting to the point where he might have to make a step up. I'm hearing a lot about him from a lot of my friends over in the UK. They're saying he's the next one. But, at least put him up against an old, washed-up veteran. Let's see how he does against someone like that. Not against some no-name that he's probably going to knock him out within a couple rounds.
Yeah.
But the HBO card, Toledo versus Roman, whatever, I could see either one winning. The Farmer fight is going to be interesting, only for the simple fact that I want to see what Farmer has after he got into the whole incident where he got shot in his hand. I wonder if that's going to affect him at all. Other than that, I don't really have many other thoughts. I'm just excited to see Lomachenko versus Rigondeaux, and we're going to really see who is the best in the lower weight classes, because these are the two best guys from 122 all the way up to 130. These are the two best guys. These are the guys that allegedly have been avoided by all the top guys from 122 to 126. So let them fight each other. Let's see how it plays out. My money's on Rigondeaux. I know a lot of people are picking Lomachenko. Lomachenko's a 3-1 favorite right now in Vegas, but I can see Rigondeaux having the fight of his life, doing what he does best, doing what he did to Nonito Donaire, and he's going to ruin Top Rank basically.
That's the thing that I'm why I'm like Team Rigo in this particular case, because if he's able to do his thing against Lomachenko, it'll be the second time that he'll take out a high-profile guy from Top Rank, as he, basically schooled Rigondeaux from like round 1 to I think it was like round 11 where he suffered that knockdown against Donaire. Terrell, have you got anything in reference to any of the fights on December 9th?
Yeah, I'm pretty much just going to echo the same sentiments of 646. I mean, just definitely looking forward to see what DeGale can do going forward. Same reasons for the Talking he recovered from his hand injury from the gunshot. Hope he can go and grab his title and start making some noise in this division. I mean, aside from that, I think that everyone, first of all, I'm glad there's so many fights in this coming weekend to close out this last quarter of the year. But like I said, the creme brulee of this weekend, we already know, is Rigondeaux and Lomachenko. I mean, this is a fight featuring two-time Olympic gold medalists. We already know about the amateur background of both fighters coming into this record. They both have stellar amateur backgrounds, and it's just extreme contrast in styles. You got Rigondeaux, who's a superb classic boxer, classic what's the phrase I'm looking for? Punch and not get hit, and supreme speed versus Lomachenko, who's more of a freestylist, great power. One thing to consider is the fact that Rigondeaux is coming up in weight for this fight. I don't think that's probably going to bother him too much. It's not like Lomachenko has massive power, even at his weight, so that's not a particular advantage. I mean, your advantage here for me is the fact that Rigondeaux, I think, has a speed advantage. But Lomachenko, I probably give an advantage probably in footwork, things like that. But it's not. I'm not suggesting that Rigondeaux is slow or just methodical or anything. He's anything but that. But this is just an extreme contrast in styles and something that the pure boxing fan is definitely looking forward to dissecting. I hope it goes 12 rounds. I mean, if I was to take a fight. I mean, personally, I want Rigondeaux to win it, probably for a couple of reasons. Just because I think he's a better fighter, he's probably more slicker in a sense, and at the same time, this is a good come up for him. If he can get this win, he's right there in some good conversation in regards to getting some more fights, and at the same time can laugh at HBO for just blackballing him, and he's going to beat their guy. So that's some extra motivation for him going with that fight. Just aside from that's. I mean, I can't wait to look at this fight and break it down. And also another reason why I want Rigondeaux to win it, because this quote unquote pound for pound king in 8 or 9, 10 fights, what he has, give him another loss. And I don't see him calling pound for pound after that with 2 losses.
Yep. That's the thing here with That's why I say, like, I'm Team Rigo, man. I just want him to, ruin either ruin careers or ruin dreams or, ruin potential big money guarantees or whatever it is with HBO and Top Rank. So that's what I'm kind of like looking for in reference to that. World Rank. Your thoughts about December 9th.
So I said some of the stuff last week, but I'm probably going to reiterate. I'm Team Lomo. Not that I want him to win. I just think he's the bigger fighter, the better fighter. If Cordoba, if the Japanese guy, and a few other guys, if they can get the rig out, Lomo will. I think if you put Rigo and Gary Russell in a match, do you really think Rigo is going to dominate Gary Russell? Lomo did. Dominated. Didn't even seem like they were in the same class. So I just don't see it being competitive. Like I said last week, I hope it's a competitive fight. I hope it's an action fight, because I can see a fight where both of them are just on the outside, not really trying to get inside. I can see a boring 12-round fight where it could be a close fight. I can see that, but I can't see Rigo dominated. I can see Lomo dominated, so I'm going with him. Again, just ask yourself, him against Gary Russell, you think he would dominate Gary Russell? My answer is no, so I know he's not going to dominate Lomachenko. The rest of the fights, I mean, Farmer has a chance. His fight with the Japanese guy has a chance to steal the show. Just because of the styles might mesh well. Like Jay Cotto said, the Salido-Roman fight is just two older guys trying to stay relevant. I don't really care who wins that. I'm saying this right now. James DeGale is faded. He's shot. It might not show up in this fight. I think he might give Truex a good fight. I mean, it's going to be an entertaining fight. I don't think he stops Truex. I think DeGale's best days are past. So pretty much everything else is running the mill. So that's what I got.
Yeah, that thing with Tevin Farmer, that's going to be, pretty interesting how he's going to be able to react to the hand injury that he got from that shooting incident, if that is really going to affect him too much. Interesting part there about Orlando Salido. To me, I mean, you have that fight there against Roman, but he's not, able to get in another opportunity for a world title shot. And I think that they could have had better matchups in this particular fight card here, because you have, Vargas and Salido fighting in separate cards when they could have been on the same card in a rematch that could have, you would have had a potential for another Fight of the Year candidate, because the one that they had in 2016 was a Fight of the Year candidate, even though it wasn't supposed to happen anyway. But I don't want to delve into that too much, although I may revisit it here in overtime. But you have 3 super featherweight fights on that particular fight card, and they could have had better matchups from those 3 fights than from those 3 spots than the 3 fights that they have out there. But I'll see if I'll be able to catch any part of that HBO card, because the thing with that fight in the Madison Square Garden Theater, yes, you do have Lomachenko going up against Guillermo Rigondeaux, but other than that, unless if you have this fight here between Chris Diaz and Casey Ramos as a co-feature, there really isn't much to build off this particular fight card. Yes, you do see Mick Collin. Yes, you do see Shakur Stevenson in there, but other than that, there's nothing really big coming out of Top Rank for this particular fight card. So that's pretty much what I gather out of this whole thing here from December 9th. We are here in the overtime portion of the Boxing Source Radio Show, and I wanted to touch on one other high-profile fight before the end of the year that's coming up, and that's on December 16th. As Frank Warren will be involved in another fight card, this time with Golden Boy Promotions, as you have that main event there in Laval, Quebec. WBO middleweight championship, Billy Joe Saunders defends it against David Lemieux. Pretty much get out from like a lot of people that they want Lemieux to actually spark or, pretty much drop Billy Joe Saunders. They're tired of him having a middleweight belt, that he's holding the middleweight belt hostage and whatnot. So kind of seeing if Lemieux will be able to step up and once again become a world champion in the middleweight division. So I wanted to, get y'all thoughts about this particular fight coming up here in 2 weeks. Start off with World Rank.
I could clearly see B.J. Saunders winning the decision. I think he's sturdy enough to take some of Lemieux punches. He's not going to sit right there and eat them. Lemieux's been outboxed twice in his career by lesser boxers, and I think B.J. is sturdy enough to and good enough defensively where he could kind of outpoint Lemieux. But I think that's going to be, the question of the fight. Is he able to avoid Lemieux's punches? I think he can clearly outbox Lemieux, but can Lemieux get to him in those 12 rounds is the key. Lemieux's been prone to get to most people, but there are some boxers that he hasn't been able to get to. And again, like I said, it's been against lesser guys. So it's going to be an interesting style, and I think we're going to see the best B.J. Saunders in that fight.
So you see, like Billy Joe Saunders ended up outboxing, pretty much like outboxing David Lemieux in order to get the decision win or something like that.
Yeah, I think he can. I think he's going to be very motivated because this is his biggest fight, and he has so many people that don't like him for whatever reason. I think he took this fight knowing that he has a chance to win.
Gotcha. 646. What do you have on this fight between Billy Joe Saunders and David Lemieux?
Honestly, I think Billy Joe Saunders is going to embarrass Lemieux. But I do take a little exception to the little commentary that you had where you said that seems like Saunders is holding the WBO belt hostage. I mean, he did sign on to fight Triple G, but Triple G did pull out so he can fight Canelo. They were supposed to fight at the Kazakhstan Expo with G, who pulled out. So it's not like Billy Joe hasn't been trying to make good fights, but that's just another topic for another day. But I see him outboxing Lemieux fairly easily. Lemieux doesn't have much footwork, doesn't have much head movement. He's more of a plotter, come straight forward, I'm going to try to knock your head off. I don't think that's going to work in this particular fight. Lemieux needs someone that's a stationary target for him, and that's not Billy Joe at all. Billy Joe moves very well, and I could see him boxing Lemieux into frustration throughout the fight. And don't be surprised if Billy Joe gets a late stoppage.
There is a potential for that, and y'all brought up the point that Lemieux has been kind of like outboxed by lesser level boxers before. It's just that, I know what you're saying about Billy Joe Saunders, but you haven't listened to previous shows that I've had where I pretty much like called out that I've called out Billy Joe Saunders, like calling him Billy Joe Saunders and stuff like that. And the whole thing with the that whole Kazakhstan thing was kind of like double-sided, because to me, after that decision that Golovkin had over Daniel Jacobs, where a few people felt that Jacobs won the fight, or whatever it was. After that, there was no way that Gennady Golovkin was going to fight anybody else but Canelo Alvarez. So that, if anybody even was thinking about fighting Gennady Golovkin before Canelo Alvarez, that wasn't going to happen, regardless. And the thing with Billy Joe Saunders is that, to me, I'm completely confident that there are certain guys that he will definitely not face while holding that WBO title. I feel that, somebody like, if Daniel Jacobs was available there as a highly ranked contender at middleweight, then, he's currently in that WBO rankings. He's currently there at number 4. Jamar Charlo is there at number 5. So you have Lemieux there at number 2, Canelo number 1, and Andrade at number 3. And I'm saying that Charlo and Jacobs being there available, I highly doubt that Billy Joe Saunders would fight either one of those guys, particularly if you're going to, have a Canelo Golovkin rematch. And then if Billy Joe Saunders ends up beating David Lemieux, what would be next for him as a WBO champion if you have, the rematch coming next? That's the only thing is, if the rematch was coming next, who would Billy Joe Saunders face? To me, I feel like Billy Joe Saunders is, if he gets his win over Lemieux, he's banking on one of two things. Either one, that they don't have a rematch and he tries to see if he could get a fight with Canelo Alvarez, or two, if they do have the rematch, then he'll just, basically hold out until the next fight, because I just doubt that he would fight Andrade or Jacobs or Charlo in his next fight when he knows that he could either fight Canelo or Golovkin next.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. This is Terrell. I'm definitely not a fan of Billy Ho Sanders. I think he's held that WBO strap hostage for some time now. All of the while calling out Triple G's name, trying to get a fight, and showing reluctance to even get the fight signed and get it going. In this fight, I actually favor Lemieux, who had some success and was a belt holder at 154. He's still pretty good at 160, not dominant per se, but I think he did bring up enough power in 160 to be relevant in the division and stay here instead of going back down. So in this fight, I'm definitely forecasting Lemieux to take this win. With Saunders, he just looked less than champion-ness in his last few fights. When you come to look at a champion, even though it is a WBO belt, he's a champion. I just don't see championship material coming from him. Championship fights, I don't get it with him. So I really want Lemieux to relieve him of this title and make Billy Ho Sanders go far, far, far away and get rid of him because we don't need him. I mean, just not a fan. That's all.
and that's the thing that we kind of have as a thought with Billy Joe Saunders or Billy Ho Saunders or Bitchy Ho Saunders or whatever people want to use to bash him, but it's just that we kind of see like a lot of the actions that he has inside and outside of the ring, and he just really it's like I don't like him. It's like it's like who's our boy Shannon Briggs says when he talks about Deontay Wilder. I don't like him, but so I just kind of like see where there has to be a point where Saunders ends up losing to somebody and just relinquishes that belt and just doesn't have that belt anymore. That's pretty much what I gather here for that particular fight that's coming up on December 16th, and that kind of like closes out 2017. So we'll be looking forward to what's in store for 2018. You do have that matchup between Errol Spence and Lamont Peterson coming up in 2018. Is one of the things that I'm kind of like looking forward to. You also have the WBA regular welterweight title that Lamont Peterson gave up. Will be on the line on January 27th as Lucas Martin Matisse will go up against Hiro Kiran for that belt, and Jorge Linares will be going up against Mercedes Gesta on that fight card in Inglewood, California. Just seeing here that also coming up in February of next year, you will have one of those World Boxing Super Series semifinals coming up on February 17th. George Groves versus Chris Eubank Jr. That'll be in Manchester, England on February 17th. So that's going to be a big fight there over in Manchester. And then February 24th will be the fight card that's going to be named Superfly 2. They do have one fight locked in, they say. It's going to be Srisaket Rungvisai against Juan Francisco Estrada for that WBC Junior or Super Flyweight championship there. So that'll be in Inglewood, California on February 24th. So I'll be looking forward to that. Real quick here, is there anything else that y'all wanted to touch on? Particularly like, I don't know if I wanted to do it here, but like that decision that the WBC made in reference to Luis Ortiz, maybe. If anyone wanted to talk about that, y'all could, y'all are open to it if y'all want to. So anything else y'all wanted to go through?
No, I think that we pretty much covered the last quarter this year, particularly these fights for this weekend and next week coming up, and just a small preview of the first quarter of 2018. The Ortiz ruling, I mean, it's the WBC. I mean, they got a long history of making wretched decisions in regards to when it comes to benefiting them in their best interests instead of the best interests of the sport of boxing. I mean, you got a fighter that's positive for performance-enhancing drugs for the second time, right? And it's shameful because you look back at try to think of the Russian guy's name. I think it's Abdulmasov, something like that. He got hurt against the Cuban that fights out of Switzerland or something like that in that fight. In that fight, no one was doping, but the thing about it, you let someone fight that's doping, and someone could potentially get hurt. And we've had several instances where people have went into comas from their fights and things like that from this year. So it's just shameful. It's really shameful, and it's disrespectful to the human spirit and to the human body as well for to allow a fighter to fight dirty in that regard. It's just shameful. That's all you can say about it.
Yeah, it's interesting how they handled the thing here with Luis Ortiz on two different fronts. You had the WBA who ended up removing Luis Ortiz from the rankings because that was his second overall offense, and particularly his second offense while being involved in the WBA, holding a minor title at the time where he fought, I think it was Latif KO'd. And then he ended up getting tested positive then, and then, leading up to what happened here in the potential fight with Deontay Wilder, he ended up getting tested positive again, and the thing was they ended up having a, dispute on that because they thought it was for, it was because of the, medications that he was taking. The only thing was that in reference to the particular form, they didn't indicate that he was taking those medications in order to get an exception. And since he didn't get an exception for it, then that's why they quote unquote took him out of that potential fight against Deontay Wilder. But it's overall interesting in reference to the WBC because they can, decide that, okay, this particular fighter can't fight for testing positive, but this other fighter can fight for testing positive. So it's like a gray area in reference to using the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association to say, hey, this guy got popped dirty, and then the WBC makes their ruling, either yay or nay instead of like an outright nay all across the board. So that's what I get out of what happened here with Luis King Kong Ortiz, and we're gonna see what's next in store for Luis Ortiz after getting this decision there. World Rank, what you got on it?
I don't really have nothing on it, man. I mean, the section about it, they just do what they want. And I think, for me, it was really a move for the WBC to get him not to fight Wilder and then just act like it never happened. I think they just wanted him to avoid Wilder. They didn't want him to fight Wilder, and I think they just try to do anything to make that happen.
Hey, 6'4", 6'4", 6". Hey, look. If I would tell you 6'4", 6". Now that there is in the group that we're in, that there's one other person in that group that pretty much says the same thing. And hey, I could bring up a case, but hey, I know you got something to say on that there, 6'4", 6". So what you got?
Well, what else can you expect from the WBC? Of course, the decision is terrible. The decision is crap. Ortiz should be banned for life. He's a dirty fighter. It's clear he's a dirty fighter. But as for who he's going to fight next, according to his trainer, They're going to be fighting on Friday, December 8th in Miami. They're going to probably fight Can just to get him some action. And then after that, don't be surprised if the Wilder fight is set up. That's the fight that everyone's looking at. That's the fight that Wilder wants. That's the fight that Ortiz wants. I mean, it's probably not the fight that people want because no one cares about Ortiz. But you know what? I want to see it just to shut the mouths of World Rank and people like World Rank, just to shut their mouths. Wilder isn't afraid to fight anyone. People confuse business with whether or not someone wants to fight someone. Boxing is still a business. These are still guys that are looking to put food on their table, try to line their pockets with money. There's nothing wrong with that. You're getting punched in the face for a living. You know what? Go make the best deal you can, get the most money you can. So don't be surprised if Ortiz is going to be next for Wilder. According to his trainer, they're trying to lobby the WBC to see if the fight that Ortiz had with Wilder can be reinstated. You have Eddie Hearn trying to throw his hat in the ring with Dillian White. You got Dominic Breazeale, who earned a title shot against Wilder. So, Wilder has a lot of choices. Ortiz is probably at the top of the list. And I say don't be surprised if you see Wilder fighting Ortiz in the spring of 2018.
Well,
hey, Jay. So I gotta ask you. He was mandated. Wasn't he mandated to fight Wilder, and he didn't? And the WBC took him out the rankings. So now they want to put him back in. So you expect them to make the fight when they could have made the fight this year?
Luis Ortiz was never taken out of the WBC rankings. Severn was the mandatory. Wilder did not want to fight Severn. Wilder wanted a bigger name, a bigger head on his platter. Wilder is the one that wanted to fight Luis Ortiz. Deontay Wilder and his people lobbied the WBC to bypass the Severn fight so that he could fight Ortiz. So for people to say that that the WBC wanted Wilder to avoid Ortiz is laughable when Wilder literally fought for half a year to get the Ortiz fight. No one can predict that Ortiz is on high blood pressure medication. No one can predict that he's on medication that my 80-year-old grandfather is taking. They thought they were going to get the fight. So Wilder still wants to fight. The fight is going to happen. Don't be surprised, first quarter of 2018, that the fight is going to happen. And don't be surprised, and I don't want to hear any excuses, when Wilder puts King Kong to sleep.
I'm coming on your YouTube channel in the spring of 2018 to make sure that you say that this fight was happening. So I got it on record right now that you said that this fight is going to happen. I'm saying the fight's going to never happen. Somehow Ortiz and Wilder is not going to fight. So I'm going to come back to you, Jay Cotto, and ask you what happened. Because the fight could have been made.
No, that's not Jay. This isn't Jay.
Oh, sorry. What's your name, sir?
Jay is the guy. Jay is the guy that actually sides with Ortiz.
Oh, this ain't Jay
in reference
Cotto?
To the whole. No, this isn't. No.
Oh, I'm sorry, 646. My bad. I thought I was talking to Jay Cotto the whole time. But the point still stands. The point still stands the same. Wilder could have fought Ortiz. Ortiz could have fought Wilder. Boxing is a business, and it's a reason why that fight didn't happen. Point blank, period. That's it.
And my overall thing has been, and this has been basically, at least for the past year or so, that the mission now for Deontay Wilder is to have that fight against Anthony Joshua by any means necessary. And that is what he's doing is the path of least resistance in order to get that fight. And he has Heyman, He has Lou DiBella. He has JD's. He has Shelly Finkel, and all of his guys behind it. And I also say that the WBC, in a way, is behind it as well. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, we all know that Deontay Wilder is the WBC World Heavyweight Champion. He won the World Heavyweight Championship in January of 2015. Now, the World Boxing Council has rules and regulations that is accessible to everybody, accessible to the public. One of the things within the WBC rules and regulations is this, that they pretty much encourage for their champions to fight every 90 or 120 days. If they do not, then either they have to apply for an exception or they will be stripped. In reference to Deontay Wilder, specifically, I'm gonna break this down here for his first defense. In his first defense of the WBC title, that was in June, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, it was in June against Eric Molina. Now, winning the title in January and then his first defenses in June, that's more than 120 days. So you mean to tell me that they were able to grant an exception then? So that's one. And then his next defense was against Johann Duhaupas. That one was a little bit more than 90 days. And then yet again, it happened in 2016 when he fought Artur Szpilka, and his next title fight was against Chris Arreola in July. Now, that gap, you could probably say that, okay, that gap was there because he was supposed to fight Alexander Povetkin in April, and that fight fell through. But even if that fight actually went through and Wilder won, that would have been in April. So you would have had a fight in April and then turn around and have a fight in July. So that's almost another 90 days. So either Wilder has been able to get a whole bunch of exceptions to defend that WBC heavyweight title, or something's going on within the WBC to where they're saying, hey, we know that if we have Deontay Wilder back as the WBC heavyweight champion, there really isn't any other guy in the heavyweight division that gives us as much as far as guarantees are concerned other than Anthony Joshua currently right now, unless Tyson Fury comes back in full strength. There really isn't anybody else out there. So a guy like a Luis Ortiz or an Alexander Povetkin or anybody else that's highly ranked within the WBC rankings won't give the WBC themselves enough of a guarantee to where they could have, more money or more notoriety, behind them than other than Deontay Wilder right now, unless if it's Anthony Joshua once they eventually match up against each other. So that's what I'm pretty much, concluding here from the World Boxing Council and Deontay Wilder is that they're basically going through the path of least resistance to Anthony Joshua and not necessarily having any challenges up to the point to where he could potentially face Anthony Joshua for all of those heavyweight championships. I want that reaction to what I said. It's open to the floor right now. Go ahead.
Hey, I'll state that just in that argument, if that is truly the case of their backdoor strategy in regards to getting Wilder a shot at Joshua and everything. Well, first of all, it's going to hurt them, and the reason why it's going to hurt them is because of the fact on the bargaining table, negotiation table for a Joshua fight. I mean, we already know that they're the B side of this fight. We all know that. But at the same time, trying to secure that fight, you just lessen your position even more. So, for example, for Joshua Wilder fight for the first heavyweight fight for next year for unification, I'm just guessing it's going to be like a 65-35 split, and really Wilder's lucky to get that, and it makes you even laugh even more that he thinks he gets it's a 50-50 split. It's not that at all. And like I said, going the path of least resistance, finding anyone credible, and I'm not going to argue that because we've done that back and forth on the show far too many times. 65-35, I mean, like I said, he's lucky to get that. And even at that point, I guess it's their hope that he can just secure the title with Joshua Unify and just and get some good lucrative fights after that and be in the driver's seat. I mean, but that's a win if that can happen. Win and if he can beat Joshua, of course he's been in driver's seat then. And from that point, but it's like I said, if that's truly the validity of the argument, he's just hurt himself on the negotiation side. So it's funny, man. It's funny.
All right. Anybody else? Wait, so nobody else wanted to speak on it?
I'm sure that what you said out there. I mean, I think you're way off base as it pertains to Wilder defending his title, but everyone's entitled to their opinions. So I'm just gonna let that sit on out there.
All right, gotcha.
I think the situation is a lot more nuanced than you say. It's not as black and white as you make it seem.
Not as black and white. I mean, I could put out, those cases or those instances what I talked about in reference to Deontay Wilder's defenses. But yeah, Terrell, brought up a good point in reference to, if he is taking that path of least resistance, then it's hurting him in the long run in a potential fight against Anthony Joshua, and where he doesn't increase his net worth in a potential fight against AJ, by, fighting these Johan Duhaupas and Chris Areolas and guys like that, instead of, fighting higher ranked contenders in the heavyweight division. I'm going to see if I could try to, get World Rank back in to comment on this, and then, bring a close to it. World Rank, you got anything on it?
So I don't know what marketability more he can get. I mean, he's never going to get 50-50 with Joshua. That's first and foremost. I mean, I do agree with you in the aspect of that's what they're pointing to. So trying to get a Joshua Wilder fight. So Luis Ortiz is a casualty to it, and I can actually prove that, because not only did the WBC make a move to not make that fight happen after it was already discussed and maybe it was already made. I'm not sure to the degree of which that fight was made, but I know it was talked about like it was on the verge of being made. The WBA, Ortiz was number one in the WBA when Joshua won the title, right? Eddie Hearn purposely signed.
Ortiz was Joshua's mandatory.
Right. Eddie Hearn purposely signed Luis Ortiz to a 2 or 3 fight deal, which he fought Dave Allen and he fought someone else, just so he can have power over Luis Ortiz's WBA position to not fight Joshua. So he can offer Luis Ortiz a certain amount of money to fight an 8-round fight as long as he stays away from Joshua. As long as that WB and the WBA obliged with that, not forcing that fight. Or maybe they stripped him. I think they did strip him to that effect. But Eddie Hearn did his job where he prevented that fight from being made. And this is the same case where things are happening in the background to prevent certain fights from being made because of a certain outcome, or because it might hinder a Joshua Wilder fight. And that's why I'm saying it's odd that Ortiz got kind of played around like that in both instances in terms of the WBC and the WBA. Even when Joshua got stripped, he still ain't get a shot at that title. There's a reason for that, and that's why I think the Ortiz and Wilder fight will never happen.
No. Joshua's still the WBA champion. He didn't get stripped of the title. What happened was Wilder is the one that stepped up and wanted to fight Ortiz. So Ortiz lobbied the WBC to put him in their rankings. Ortiz wasn't a WBC fighter previously. He was only fighting for the WBA. Deontay Wilder and his people got Ortiz positioned for the Wilder fight since AJ wasn't, quote-unquote, according to Ortiz, man enough to take on the challenge.
There's no place to the fight that he hasn't had a title shot either.
I pretty much say it's a marketing ploy on multiple sides, but I think it's more so in reference to Wilder in the WBC than the thing with Anthony Joshua and the WBA. And I'm gonna break it down like this. Now, in reference to the WBA itself, they have been like really sketchy themselves, because if you go back to 2016, the beginning of 2016, the WBA was supposed to have a heavyweight tournament to consolidate all of the belts there in their particular organization. Excuse me. So you were supposed to have the rematch between Tyson Fury and Vladimir Klitschko. You're supposed to have Luis Ortiz against Alexander Usanov. You had Ruslan Chagaev against Lucas Brown, and then for some unexplainable reason they had Freza Kendo not facing anybody in a bye. And in 2016 we find out the whole thing with Tyson Fury, so that Fury Klitschko thing fell apart. Lucas Brown and Ruslan Chagaev were able to fight each other, so that fight actually happened. And then Luis Ortiz, I think at that particular time, was still going through the whole contractual, war with him and Golden Boy Promotions, and that, in that particular fight that was proposed for him and Usanov, that he wasn't, getting enough money out of the deal. So that fight ended up being turned down and ended up being canceled. And that's how he ended up being signed by Eddie Hearn before the end of 2016. Now, going into 2016 and 2017, since that whole WBA tournament kind of like fell apart, there was nothing to make of that WBA title. So we knew that after Joshua, got his win against Eric Molina, that they were going to make, Joshua Klitschko. But we didn't know that it was going to be for that WBA heavyweight title. They ended up doing it later, but, not, soon before the fight, like the whole thing with that Kovalev-Shabransky thing where they just added the WBO title out of nowhere and that type of stuff. It wasn't like that, but at least, we knew that if the winner of that would have been the WBA quote-unquote super heavyweight champion. So from the point that, Tyson Fury ended up being suspended and those titles were vacant until April, the WBA didn't have a heavyweight champion. So Luis Ortiz was sitting right there at number one in the rankings with no heavyweight champion. The WBA themselves didn't make how they usually have, if a title is vacant, the number one and the number two guys usually fight for the title, or the highest ranked guys available would fight for the title. The WBA never, chose for Ortiz to fight for that heavyweight title. So that title was vacant up until, April, when Joshua fought Klitschko. And with Joshua beating Klitschko, he ended up getting that WBA title, that WBA super title. So it's like, okay, he just became the WBA champion, so he couldn't necessarily, fight Ortiz first because he was already IBF champion for over a year. So if he fought Ortiz first, he would have had the IBF title stripped. So he had to obligate to the IBF championship first. Then after that, he would have obligated to the WBA championship. But this whole thing with Ortiz now being, suspended by the WBA, now he doesn't really have to worry about a mandatory obligation, so to speak, there. But in reference to Ortiz and the whole thing with Joshua, that was a whole different situation because the WBA themselves kind of, messed everything up by not, having a world championship fight with Luis Ortiz after Tyson Fury had the belt stripped from him. They could have, made a fight between Vladimir Klitschko and Luis Ortiz for that WBA belt. They didn't do it. They could have had Luis Ortiz fight, Ustinov or Freza Kendo or Lucas Brown or any of those guys, and they didn't do it. The WBA kind of went through that same type of move with the WBC as to where, okay, we want the biggest or most known guy to hold this title to add notoriety to the world championship instead of having guys fight it out to see who the best guy is.
Yeah, but how are they going to do that when Lucas Brown failed his doping test? Remember, Lucas Brown won the WBA.
Yeah, Lucas Brown ended up failing the doping test, so that he would have been taken off the rankings. So what would happen is it would be that, the WBA would choose the two highest ranked contenders that are available for that particular fight. If Lucas Brown is out, then you get the guy that would have been next in line.
They had Ruslan Shagayev as the champion, but remember he got stripped of the title because he didn't want to pay his sanctioning fees. He got stripped of the title.
He was a WBA regular champ, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then he didn't want to pay his sanctioning fees.
Because he didn't pay his sanctioning fees. The reason why the title was vacant was because after Shagayev didn't pay his sanctioning fees, Ortiz wasn't available to fight. Remember, Ortiz claimed that he was injured, and then he had his problem with Golden Boy. They literally had no one to fight for the title.
Remember, the thing was, it was in March 5th, right? Because March 5th, 2016, you had on one side, Luis Ortiz was fighting Tony Thompson over in the D.C. Armory on March 5th, 2016. And earlier that day was the Lucas Brown Ruslan Shagayev fight for the WBA regular heavyweight championship.
Yeah.
So you had Lucas Brown basically as the WBA regular champion because he won by TKO. So he was scheduled to fight Freza Kendo in that potential tournament. So
yeah.
So with that on one side, you have Ortiz and Ustinov on the other side, and that fight ended up falling through. So while that fight fell through, and Tyson Fury ended up not fighting Vladimir Klitschko, relinquishing the Super Championship, you had Lucas Brown as there at a certain point as the WBA regular champion. And then later on that year, he ended up being stripped because of him testing positive, right? So
yeah.
So once he got
as the champion.
So Shagayev ended up being
reinstated. He got reinstated as the champion.
He got reinstated as the champ. So that was like 2016 there, right?
I would say about the summer of 2016.
Yeah. Okay, so something happened in between that. You saying December 2016?
No, in the summer of 2016, Shagayev was reinstated as the champion, and then towards the end of the summer, he got stripped because he didn't want to pay his sanctioning fees. The reason why the WBA title was vacant for so long was because of the Fresno Kendo situation. Remember, he's been suing the WBA for a couple years because he was promised a mandatory title shot, which he never got. So they were in court, and he was blocking every fight that the WBA would try to make because he's owed a title shot, and they've been pushing him off, and arbiter ruled that he's entitled to his title shot. So that's why you see the mess the WBA is with now. That's why they had the Manuel Charr fight for the WBA regular title.
Yeah, Manuel Charr.
Yeah, they're trying to run interference. They don't want to see Oquendo versus Joshua because they think that's a waste of time. So what they've been trying to do was position a regular champion to take on Oquendo so Oquendo can get his title shot that he's legally obligated to get.
Okay. So, Manuel Charr won that fight the last Saturday. So, in 2018 here coming up, they'll probably work towards having Charr fighting Oquendo because Oquendo right now is the number one guy in the rankings. So they'll have that Oquendo Charr fight, and then after that they'll see if if Oquendo wins, then they'll see if they'll be trying to go up against Anthony Joshua or whatnot. But those rankings right now, you have Oquendo there, and then next below him is Alexander Povetkin as the Intercontinental Champ, and then Christian Hammer and Big Baby Miller. So, which actually that's kind of interesting there too, like how that happened, because if I'm not mistaken, Kubrat Pulev was the highest ranked guy there before he ended up getting injured, and then with Joshua. IBF. Yeah, that's right. Pulev IBF. That's right. Yeah. But Fresno Kendo, he's been there for a good little minute. And that whole thing with the lawsuit, man, they've been going back and forth for years because Kendo hadn't even fought since then.
Yeah, he hasn't fought since 2014.
Yeah, so man, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get that fight out of the way as soon as possible here in 2018. They probably WBA probably hollered at Manuel Charr and say, hey, I know you won this belt here, in the end of November, but you gonna be ready in February or March or something like that. So you can fight Fresno Kendo real quick and then see if you can win, so we don't have to deal with him anymore. That could be the case.
You got a guy that's 44 that hasn't fought since 2014 versus a guy that had both his hip replaced. It doesn't make any sense.
That's the WBA for you sometimes. So I don't know what to really make out of all that.
Don't forget the Shannon Briggs Fresno fight got canceled this year too.
Yeah, that's because of Shannon Briggs getting hit. Yeah, that's because they got Shannon Briggs with illegal substances. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of a lot of these alphabet organizations though. So it's crazy to me, man. Pretty much like on that note, I'm bringing a close to this episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show here on December 3rd, 2017. I thank all of y'all for calling in. We're looking forward to the next episode on December 10th to review all of those fights that are going to be happening on December 9th. Once again, check out the articles, boxing articles on thechtlsports.com, and follow the social media platforms, the Boxing Source on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google+, Instagram. Be sure to follow all of those, and be sure to catch the other shows on the Go Long Media channel. You have Take This L on Wednesday nights, at 8:30, and you have the Cold Hard Truth on Sports Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. here on the Go Long Media channel. And like I said, at the end of every show, the point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, I'm out. Have a good evening.